the other interesting thing that I picked from eBee is that, and your team's story, is that you focus a lot on young women in terms of empowering them as engineers within what you do. Was that deliberate?
Job opportunities are limited for women and for youth. One of the striking numbers from your conference was the 200,000 out of the 1 million youth who only find a job.
Yeah.
And we know that women are underrepresented in those 200,000.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a conscious choice in establishing our business to have a very strong focus on women and youth.
Youth unemployment is a challenge, and we do need to be innovative in how we are creating these solutions. And with this younger generation, you're finding that they're not necessarily interested in the work that was traditionally available for the older generation. So for many of us that grew up and knew you go to school, you stay on for 4 years, and then you get a job. I read an article yesterday in the papers that was talking about how young people are turning to shorter courses in terms of diplomas now, instead of going for the full hog in terms of degrees that take 4 years or 6 years in the case of architecture and engineering. And there's a reason to that, because there's a need, because of, I guess, social media, there's a need to quickly respond to the challenges, but they also don't have the attention span to last that long when it comes to education. They just want to swipe. Yeah. In fact, now we're getting to the point where you get in the comment section, for those of us who've been following, in the comment section of most videos, you'll always find a summary. Like, people find, what exactly is the point? Besides the long story that you're saying, what is the point? And that's the kind of generation that we are sort of like looking at right now. How have you found, in terms of balance, the young people's responsiveness to your product vis-a-vis the older generation?
From the year of testing in 2022, we initially thought this vehicle, an electric bicycle, could be really suitable for boda riders, because we know when you compare the two vehicles, electric bicycle is 2.5 times more affordable in its operations. So they could save money. They could earn more money with any delivery in the last mile. But of course, it's also a bit of a culture to be a boda rider. Yeah. It's a more masculine machine. And in general, they look a bit down on electric or on bicycles in general. Bicycles are seen as a poor man's product. So they don't want to be associated with it. So we started to explore who else then could be interested, because we were so convinced this vehicle class could play a role in cities. And then we quickly found out that women were really attracted by it, because women do cycle. Women, when you think about logistics and mobility, hardly play a role. I find it always striking when I'm in the countryside, how I see women sitting at the side of the road, just waiting for transport, while they're not being able to operate a vehicle themselves. Yeah. So with electric bicycles, and at least now we started in cities, we see that lots of women feel empowered. Now I can work as well. Now I also can become a delivery rider. Yeah. Why shouldn't women also do deliveries? And the other part is youth, because of the enormous unemployment, but also the opportunities to just start. Because you see that when you want to do deliveries, you need to have a vehicle, and to be able to have a vehicle, you need to have an income. So it's a bit a chicken-egg a challenge. Of course, there's microfinance companies who provide loans, but as a young person with no working history, with no savings, you can't afford a deposit, you can't afford, or you can't show a credit history. So you're stuck. And that's where we felt we need to step in. We have these electric bicycles. We have proven with the first people who use the bikes that you can start to earn a decent income by being a delivery rider. So why not provide a vehicle and start to close contracts with the major platforms to be able to start to work.
Great. So let's go back to your journey as an entrepreneur, the transition from corporate to this business. And you did mention that there was an inspiration there in terms of corporate life, where you were structured in your life. and then I think you also mentioned that in the context of Europe, this is a normal thing, the use of bikes, and I think your team also mentioned the use of bikes as opposed to either public transport or just private vehicles. It's a normal thing in Europe. How are you seeing that taking shape in Kenya or in Africa?
So what we of course see is that electric bicycles fulfill a need in all those cities in Europe and in the US. And of course you can't just copy paste that to Africa. Yeah. On the other hand, when you look at the developments in the larger cities in Africa, you see that there's an enormous growth of the cities taking place. More and more the urbanization, people moving to the cities expanding. And at the same time, there's not more space for roads, you know. You can build an expressway, but how many expressways can you more build in a city without destroying the city? On the other hand, you also see that more and more cars are coming into the cities because the middle class is also growing. But it's an unsustainable development if you don't do anything about it. One of the solutions we feel for this whole development is what people call non-motorized transport, so walking and cycling, where people are not using the cars, are not using buses and matatus predominantly, but start to move. And we see an opportunity in the future, and of course this is not tomorrow, it's also not next year, but to help cities.
It's a growing space,
Exactly, to become more livable, because you know, being stuck in traffic, the congestion is enormous, and already now. You know, when I move on my electric bicycle back from work, I pass all these cars, and then I think, you know.
So Stan, on this platform, we try to get young people to see that, you know, green jobs are actually available for them, and to inspire innovators who are thinking of addressing one issue or the other in the climate space, to know that someone else is already doing it. So if you have an idea, this is a good time to jump in. But one of the challenges or questions that we've gotten quite a bit is, what are those challenges that innovators, a typical innovator like you or an entrepreneur in this space would face? So this is a new space, you know, e-bicycles. We know of e-bikes, but we're just acclimatizing to that. And then now there's e-bicycles, which is great. But then what are the challenges that you're facing as an entrepreneur trying to get this product rolled out?
Yeah, so there's challenges that people don't know what an electric bicycle is. So it's more like the knowledge you need to build up with many people, like your potential customers, but also with the government authorities, because it has a motor. But it's not a motorbike. It's also not a bicycle because it has a motor. So where does it fit? And that already starts when you want to bring in the bicycles or the components into the country. It's
mean,
new.
Like at customs, they don't know how to categorize.
Exactly, and if they don't know, of course, they charge the highest import duty. So having these conversations on many levels with government, with customs, with the KRA, with CAPS, it takes time. And we understand that because it's new, you know, and you need to explain. People also need to understand your intentions as a business. Are you here just to bring in a container, sell and run away? Or are your intentions seriously to set up a Kenyan business? And especially when it comes to vehicles, it's not so much only the vehicle, it's also the services, the spare parts. That whole ecosystem needs to be in place to be successful in the future. And building trust takes time. We all know that. So when you think you can do this quickly, then you will be disappointed. So we decided if you're going to set up a business in Nairobi, then we need to build this up from the ground and do this in a very sustainable way, where we include everything and everyone who is a stakeholder for us. And also when you think about bicycles, cycle lanes, there's also lots of groups who are already involved in this. So Critical Mass, Mama Cycling, all those organizations, it's important to work together, you know. We share our passion for bicycles. We want to make cycling safe in Nairobi. We want to grow the amount of cyclists. So we want to be very much into that whole ecosystem.
I'm actually going to ask a question that I don't think I've asked anyone on this platform before. As an entrepreneur, there's that balance between the doing good, in this case, which is, of course, contributing to decarbonization. And then there's the money bit, because you have to be able to sustain the business. And you're a corporate, ex-corporate individual. And one of the things that you've been trained, because I also worked in the private sector, is numbers, profit, bottom line. How do you balance that, making the money to make it sustainable, and sustainable as a business, but also making it a sustainable business because it's contributing to the environment? How do you balance those two?
Yeah, so we have said from the beginning, we can only scale this idea if you're profitable. Because otherwise we need to move to the NGO route, and then you're dependent on donations. And NGOs are doing fantastic work.
But that's not your space.
That is not our space, but it's also, I think, a very big risk for the future. You're always dependent on money from somebody else, and if somewhere in the world somebody decides there's no money anymore for your project, then it ends. So we decided, and also based on my experience, we know certain margins we need to realize to make a bicycle business, an electric bicycle business, sustainable, but combine that with very strong purpose of creating jobs and contributing to carbon emission savings. And so it's in the DNA of the company to do this. And when I compare that, for example, with the corporate businesses I used to work with, this, what you could call ESG, is very often a report or a page in the annual report. But it's not part of the DNA of the company. And I think it will take time for those businesses to get there. But when you start your own business, you determine the rules. So we determined, and it's even in the statutory documents, that the purpose of our business is jobs and it's climate contribution. So we're never going to deviate from that. But we know that we need to make money, otherwise we can't attract more investment to grow the business. So for us it goes hand in hand. And it's constantly finding that right balance, but it's a natural discussions we have. When we see that, for example, fortunately the shilling is in a better space than it was last year, but if the shilling is devaluating again, then we need to unfortunately raise our prices, because otherwise we're loss making, and then we can't sustain that business, and we can't sustain the jobs.
And that's a tricky, I guess, paradox around running an actual business in the sustainability space, because you do need to find that balance, and that's a great answer.